Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we are pleased to have with us once again our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey. Let's receive him.
Islam, Shalom, Radamakum. We want to talk to you tonight about some fundamentals that we've been talking for the last 25, 30 years to help, if we could, in any manner, to help the people prepare themselves for the open attacks that are simply manifest of old attacks, if you get the point. The issue is the things that are manifesting politically in these days with the biological warfare we've told you about for the last 25, 30 years. The robbery of your pension plans and the 401k, that's where they're pulling the fiat to send out to a limited numbers of people to maintain the blind faith that promised 1,200 notes, which will not be forwarded to most of the people. It will be delayed, and to the degree that they've stolen from the pension plans, from the 401k plans, from the hedge funds, and from Social Security to help maintain the people's blind faith in the oligarchical system of the Roman Curia members who have been calling themselves Congress of the United States. Unfortunately, the people, for the most part, except for a few, for whatever the reasons, didn't believe that these people were really waging war on the people of the land, particularly the Aboriginal people. But now they've gotten to the point where their own U.S. corporate citizens are now collateral damage. And while it's difficult for people to accept that these beings that they have been calling their government is actually attacking them, and many of them still don't accept that reality, for the few who will listen, we just want to share some things. Put it this way, to kind of ease the mental pressure that is deliberately put upon the people through designed psychic attacks, through economic oppression and starvation, as well as biological warfare, germ warfare, microwave warfare against the people. And it's not unfortunately, it's not for the most part what people have thought it has been. It's not coming from some foreign source. It's coming from these people who have been arbitrarily, under a color of law, de facto governing over our land, though they are not lawfully our government. And that's a harsh reality that I think many people are beginning to reluctantly, but by necessity, accept that as truth and reality. One of the things I wanted to talk about, among other things, is to mention to you, and many of you have, in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years where we've been encouraging the people to do a reversion of a state. And a reversion of a state is basically, in its principle, publicly claiming your right to your labor, publicly claiming your right to all inheritances, claiming your right to proper governance, claiming your right to traditions and culture, without interference from the occupying colonial forces of the hybrid Europeans who have been occupying our land for the last few hundred years, pretending to be Americans, while at the same time doing all things with all their powers, whether scientific, political, economic, educational, to destroy the people and to slow walk, impinge, and infringe on all liberties and all rights and all accoutrements. Now, that's a fact. And it's sort of like we collectively have to begin to start taking responsibility together, considering your neighbors, considering your families, considering the people in the multiple communities at North America, and being willing to help each other, because you're going to need to. That's number one. Number two, it is the right thing to do. And the other point is, these people who many of you, not all, have been considering your government are not failing you by accident. Their position has been and is that they robbed you of all your resources, and many of them want to kill you off. That's really, to put it in layman's terms, that's basically what it is. Although they'll disguise it with viruses, they'll disguise it with clouds. Many of you are aware of clouds. They'll disguise it in the GMOs in the food. They'll disguise it in pretending to. They never pretend, because they put it this way: they never present a cure in the military medical complex. They always promote treatments and management. And of course, when they drain the people's resources, then they go through their usual rituals of killing the people off and then collecting on them or off their insurance policies. The other thing that I think that people have not been aware of that you need to really consider is that these people who you have been thinking is your government, and they are not. Let's get this clear. Have not only set up their fiat system in order to steal your resources, they've also, through their very fiat systems, putting insurance policies on all the people, and particularly people in entertainment industry, whether they're singers or artists, rappers, whatever, and by way of robbing them of their intellectual property, when it is at their whim, or when the beings are no longer useful to them, they will conveniently disappear them or stop them from breathing by multiple means, and then collect compound insurance policies on these people, most of whom don't know these insurance policies exist, because they believe in these people. And it's unfortunate. But one of the things I wanted to mention to you is, when we talk to the people about United States Code 9512, Title 12, 95 subsection A, the thing that you need to recognize is this whole fiction not only is the fiat system of the Circle Church and Chancery and the Jesuit Order of the Roman Curia members a fraud, so is the debt that they allege that goes with it. And so one of the other things they've been doing with the people has been deliberately through psychic attacks and through their controlled media propaganda systems, and that's all your mainstream media and including some of your alternative media, to project the psychic attack and to have the people buy into the concept that they are in perpetual debt from birth. They'll start off with the concept that you're in debt to the Pope and the Roman Curia members, with the statement that they have propagated that the people are born in sin, implying the negative and that they're in debt of their lives to the Pope, and then thus through the Roman Curia members and through any corporate entity controlled under the unum sanctum policies of the Pope, i.e., this is the principle upon which they build their government ordinance departments that they refer to as God on the planet Midgard Earth. And so therefore, when you study any of the legislation of the United States Corporation Company, subsidiary of the Queen of England and the Circle Church and Chancery of Fleet Street, England, they're all connected. And without going into any necessary detail, I think most of you are already aware about the Trinity Star that you'll see in the district that they have claimed for the Roman goddess Columbia, referred to as the District of Columbia, and you'll see those 3 stars. Of course, most of you are already aware that those stars represent the Vatican, and that would include the Pope of Rome and the bishopric. And then you have the second star, which would represent the Circle Church and the Chancery, Fleet Street, England, i.e. Westminster. And then you have the third star that represents the takeover district of the demon platform that they refer to as the Democratic Party that they set up through the Kyklos, or what you call it, the Great Circle, Ku Klux Klan, and to overthrow the republic that has origin in the laws of the Aboriginal people of the land, etc., honesty. And they'll say equa, i.e. The Constitution principles from the ancient ones, which is our law. Unfortunately, we're in a position where we are now that many of the people aren't aware that the alleged debt, and sometimes you'll hear the conversations about a projected or alleged debt jubilee. That is not their intention. That was only to keep the people blindly believing that these people one day rise off of what they refer to as the iron hand of Rome on the people. But the 1295, Title 1295A indicates that the debts that were created by the kingship oligarchs, they'll not say that in the documents or in the law book, but that's who you're dealing with. You're dealing with the people. Let's get this very clear. Let's put these things down so that you can understand what I'm talking about. When I refer to the kingship oligarchy, I'm referring to the persons who are claiming to be senators and congressmen and all branches of government for the United States Corporation Company that has been perpetrated falsely as a country since approximately shortly after 1861. And the people have been groomed to that, so it's kind of difficult for the average person to discern what we're talking about sometimes when we'll use these true phrases of what you're actually dealing with, distinguished from what they've been trained under the docility training of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates Animal Training Facility Board of Education set up in 1902. And so some of these things that we're saying is not, that may be unfamiliar to some of the people, understand that it is absolutely the truth and can be researched and cross-referenced, and we suggest that you do the same. But at any rate, many of you are familiar. There's a general statement that we had presented to you all over the years as a public claim to refute the surety that they have been claiming you to be for their private theft debt of both your inherited estate and as well as the fictional false estate that they created on the people for the Pope of Rome in order to claim the bodies, the inheritances, and all future labor of all living beings on the planet, and also their right to cull the people, i.e. cull, C-U-L-L, simply it's how would you say, a moderate way of saying kill them at will. And so when the people, it's difficult for the people to imagine that these people who've been claiming to be their government has been systematically over the generations killing them off. And that's just the truth. Let's say this too. The chronic diseases that are common in North America in these last, say, 50, 60, 70, 100 years are not natural. Most of them are from the biological and chemical and disease warfare that the members of the Roman Curia, through their corporate entities and in the guise of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, have been actually committing against the people at the people's expense, meaning that they've been stealing your labor in the name of bookkeeping of fiat called taxes, which is really tithing to Rome and the bishopric, and disguised as service to the people, and using it actually to fund scientific and medical research for the purpose of actually killing the people and keeping them sick. Now that is the truth. No matter how you take it, that is the truth. That's what's been happening to you. But for this moment, to relieve some of the mental pressure that the people are suffering from the psychic attack, which is multi-layered, which is put upon them at this time, and this is only because the kingship oligarchs are being challenged by different entities around the planet. And to keep it simple, I'll just talk about the mundane entities that are some that we refer to as nations. And since many of the nation states, as we have been telling the people for the last few years to try to get them to start protecting themselves, are no longer buying the U.S. corporation treasury bonds, which they have been using to fund their Inquisition operations in the Western Hemisphere, and particularly since 1861, and affirmatively since around February the 2nd, 1871, when the oligarchs set up for themselves the Organic Act of Congress of 1871, and incorporated the lives of the people under the guise of U.S. citizens for sale through the stock markets, etc., which is really what's been going on. And so the instruments that they have been putting upon the people in the name of normal living, like marriage certificates, birth certificates, and later on in, say, around the 20s and 30s, driver's licenses, etc., all are actually bank bonds against the people's, against their labor, liens against all present and future inheritances, which is also why many people get kind of confused when they go to school and they learn 1 and 1 is 2, and 2 and 2 is 4, and 4 and 4 is 8, and 2 from 4 leaves 2, And yet when it comes to their labor and their compensation, which is never called compensation, will be called pay, and they're never paid. They always are told they need an accountant to calculate their tithe tax to the oligarchs, who they keep claiming is their government. Isn't it interesting how the fundamentals of arithmetic and mathematics all of a sudden doesn't count when people accumulate what they think is wealth through the Federal Reserve note fiat system, and the complexity of the mathematics is rationally or rationalized and justifiably altered and changed to the degree that the average person allegedly having an education can't count their own fiat, and their fiat often bankrupts them when it's supposed to be mathematically a small percentage of their alleged compensation, which the oligarchs have misclassified as income. And I want to mention this because it's very important for people to comprehend what I'm talking about. The people's compensation for labor, which is also referred to as wages, by law is not taxable. It is actually your private property. Your labor and your output, your energy output, is private property and protected by natural law and thus by Constitution principle, which is why none of these oligarchs ever talk about the Constitution nor the Republic platform that they're supposed to be governing from to secure and protect your right of property, etc. So the average person, in the name of education, thinks that compensation for their labor is income. They have not been told that income applies to foreign corporate entities only, and not with the capital investment of stock or output in a principal outlay, but absolutely and only applies to the profits that are generated from the capital investment. That alone is income. Nothing else is income. Now, the fact that these persons that you've been calling your civic leaders and your religious leaders and your political leaders generally all know this. Isn't it interesting that no one ever talks about this, and yet they're always talking or promising to people that the pressures and that the problems that they're having politically and economically, if you join their organizations, they will pray you out of it. And or if you join their political party and vote for them, they will legislate some laws to undo the problems that you're in. Now, let's use common sense. Now, if these people were governing you according to constitutional principles that limit their capacities and delegated authority, the problems that they keep promising you that they're going to solve would not exist in the first place, which is the first indicator that they have not only been misgoverning you and misgoverning over you, that they've literally been robbing you. And then taking taxes from you and actually funding private corporations to do injury to you, foreign and domestic, funding enemies to you and upon you and on you with taxes from you, and then charging you again with more taxes to counter the attacks that are being made on you by funding that you compensate for under taxes by these people you thought you were your government. Fact of the matter is that's really what you've been suffering from. Fact of the matter is, this is why anyone that begins to even examine the corrupt structure of the Roman Curia members, no matter who they are, usually meet what you call a non-breathing demise. whether you want to talk about people like Il Malik, Malcolm X, Khalid Muhammad, John F. Kennedy, and anyone that you want to put in any category of anyone that even begins to tell the people a little bit, not necessarily all, a little bit of truth about the Roman Inquisition operations that are really taking place. And I'm not talking about the race game that they keep throwing into people's faces, which is a diversion, and the prejudice game that they keep throwing into people's face, which is a diversion. You're really talking about Roman Curia operations under Unum Sanctum, which we've been telling people for 25, 30, 40 years. Truthfully, I think it should not be too difficult for people, many who used to criticize all these things that we've been telling the people. It's kind of difficult for many of them to come back and to dispute what we're saying. And with many others, and you know, many of them know who they are, I'm not going to sit around and say to you, I told you so. You know, that's not where I'm coming from. My issue is to help the people. My issue is not to create any what you call animosity. That's what we do not need. If anything, the unity that people been claiming that they wanted for so many generations, this is their opportunity to show it. For all the spirituality that multiple people from all walks of life have been claiming that they have and possess and have been practicing, well, it appears that they've been practicing for decades, but they produced very little of what their claims have been. And that goes in relationship to the responsibilities that all of us must take. All of us must take. One of the things that we need to recognize as we look at this thing is that we've made a lot of claims that have not produced the product, whether spiritual, political, or economic, that we have all claimed. What that does present to us, being responsible humans on Midgard Earth, is to start taking responsibility to start intelligently, fairly, and with justice, moving toward processes, order, organization to fix these things for all of humanity, and not to approach these things with any intended pretext or with any intended selfish gain, but for the intent to actually help one another. I want to say this to you too. It is necessary, yes, for us to really become serious about structured government, honored structured government, because I'm going to tell you right now, the government platform that has been over you for these last centuries is dead. It's not that the people that have been doing it are not necessarily physically dead, but the platform will not be revived, so don't look for it. Don't be upset because you're not going to go back to it. You're going to be forced to be the spiritual beings that you have claimed to be, not what I say that you are, or that someone else has said that you are. You're going to be forced to be the great spiritual beings that you have been claiming that you are, whether you've been claiming to be Muslim, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, Confucius, matters not. All masks are off, and you're charged by nature to prove your claims of gods, etc., and to have a clearer understanding and comprehension of what you've been doing to yourself, what you've been doing to your people, what you've been doing to your children, what you've been doing to this planet. And in fact, you're not going to be left off the hook. So let's get over ourselves and get over our egos and go deep within ourselves and look for the best that's in us and start solving problems for real.